What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the Haslab Unicron with the O1 Studio Cell version of Unicron. So there's a few disclaimers here today. Number one, these are obviously very different costs and going along with that, very different sizes. We do take a look at cost in one of the categories, but we don't take a look at scale or comparison today because neither of them really scale with any version or any scale in Transformers, either Chug or Masterpiece. It doesn't really matter because this character would have to be huge to be in scale. So because of that, we're not going to look at or consider scale or size today. Second disclaimer is I have already purchased both of these figures. So I've invested and I am likely not going to get rid of one of these. Usually when I do these comparisons, I decide which one I prefer and then I keep one and typically sell the other one. I'm not going to be selling Haslab Unicron. I will be selling the O1 Studio Cell. That decision's already been made. But because of that, I try to be as objective as possible in these reviews, but of course there's subjectivity involved. I'm trying to do my best here to be objective about these categories, but if I pick one or the other in a category and you prefer the other one, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons to help people make decisions for their collections and for their display. With that being said, let's get started with the review and we'll start off with accessories. All right, there are the accessories you get with both of these figures. We'll go through them one by one. So both of them come with the screw hole covers here. Now I've already installed the Haslab ones. I actually never even opened the O1 Studio Cell, so there you go. They both come with a display stand. The O1 Studio Cell display stand doubles as a, I don't know, it's just kind of a display piece. So you can actually put these on the side of the planet mode, kind of to make him look like he's half transforming. But then it's really meant to, you know, display the planet mode and kind of have a stand for it. And they give you two of these, so it is symmetrical. You can also use this to show, you know, him eating and this kind of being the vacuum, you know, effect. So you do get two of these. These are basically duplicate. The Haslab comes with its own stand that doubles in both the robot mode and the planet mode. So they both come with a stand, which is good. You just get a little bit of extra use out of this stand because it's a display piece. It's also painted very, very nicely. Next, you get alternate faceplate and chin here for the Haslab Unicron. For the O1 Studio Cell, you get alternate plates here for the planet mode. This is to color match with the cartoon. Now, these are actually very painful to install. It's just not, not very convenient, but you can do it. You can just, in planet mode, you can change these out. So I'm going to call those two even though there's four of these, it's really just for duplicate because of the symmetry of the planet. So we'll call those even. And here's what you're kind of left with. You get these two little teeny tiny figures here for Hot Rod and Galvatron. Then you also get this stand here, which can house the head for Unicron, and then you get the little Arc ship. So just by a tiny little hair, because of this little stand here and the stuff that you can put on it, I'm going to give Haslab the edge on accessories. Now I'll take a minute to talk about the gimmicks, and there aren't that many, so we probably go pretty quickly. On the Haslab, nothing much in the robot mode, but in the planet mode, you do get the maw, which opens and closes, and I'll put an image here so you can see. And as you open it, the teeth kind of open and close. That's a really, really cool feature in that planet mode. On the O1 Studio Cell, you do get a light-up head here, so I'm going to remove it and kind of show that to you. You get light-up eyes there that turn green, and then the top of the head lights up, and that's really for the planet mode. The maw lights up in that yellow color, so that's really cool. So because they both have pretty cool things in the planet mode, and they're about equal in terms of the gimmicks, I'm going to give them a tie on gimmicks. All right, now we'll talk about the cartoon accuracy. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look. Obviously, these two take up my entire review area. I have no space left, so unfortunately, you have a little bit of my outside the review area over here. But when it comes to cartoon accuracy, both of these guys really did a good job. So let's talk about each one individually. So taking a look at the Haslab Unicron, they did a good job color matching, although this silver, not so sure. I mean, I think it looks good, the color, but not so sure it matches that cartoon image I have up there. Overall, the red, the orange, and this blue the darker blue all seem to match well. Now all of this sculpted detail down here isn't really in the cartoon model. Obviously these aren't on there. We're going to get to that when we get to Sculpt. We'll talk about these panels on the backpack and back here. But he does have the collar here around the head. That is accurate. There is some sculpted detail on the cartoon model. There's some extra little blue details and silver details. Now, while that's not in the cartoon model, it does look nice. But as far as cartoon accuracy, they did a pretty nice job on the Haslab. But where it kind of deviates is a lot of extra detail and obviously the panels here. When you come to O1 Studio Cell, I did notice these are actually supposed to be opposites like they are on Haslab. But you can see they made it symmetrical. Probably for purposes of production, it's easier to make it symmetrical. But you can see from the image they're not symmetrical in the original design. So that is a little deviation there. It does have relatively clean everywhere. These panels are all clean and smooth, kind of all throughout. It does have these cues here. All these shapes and bits here all look pretty good. It does have the thinner looking and the tri-folded wings here, which is more accurate. So there are the two head sculpts. I do have O1 Studio kind of propped up on this spudger there, just so you could see it a little bit easier. Now they both have some really similar cues, but they take some different approaches here. So the Haslab went with a blue that kind of connects, so it goes over the eyes and connects into this triangle here, whereas the O1 Studio Cell has the bottom blue part here and then some separation and a little bit of blue above the eyes. That actually looks closer to that G1 cartoon, which I'll put in the corner there. They also both have the horns on the O1 Studio Cell are kind of more curved and more circular, whereas the Haslab go out further and kind of look more like bull horns, whereas this is more like circular. They also have a different style for the eyes, so this one is kind of more flattened out and straight, whereas these are more curved and upwards, which I think looks a little bit closer to the G1 cartoon. I also think that the face on the O1 Studio looks more like a face with the actual goatee, whereas this one, it just looks kind of like a shape. It's not necessarily goatee, and this one just tends to look more humanoid in terms of its face. So based on the differences I've seen and the liberties I've seen Haslab take with the panels here on the legs and on the back, the head overall being close but somewhat a deviation from the cartoon, and then the wings here not being in the triangle shape but more just three lines together, I'm going to give cartoon accuracy over to O1 Studio Cell. I think they nailed it a little bit better. Next, we're going to talk about the sculpt on these two. And this should be relatively quick. So I do really like the sculpted detail on Haslab. I think it just stands out. It really is eye-catching. But as far as the cleanliness, it really just no good with these pancakes on the side and the pancakes on the back. And then some little bits like these right here. You know, those really stand out. So I'm going to give Sculpt over to O1 Studio. I really just think it's extremely clean. It's very symmetrical. It just looks like it becomes a planet. So we'll give Sculpt over to O1 Studio Cell. All right, next we're going to talk about the paint on these two figures. In order to do that, I'll just point out the painted parts. So the head on O1 Studio Cell, the face is fully painted. You have the blue paint here for the bottom part. And then the rest of this, the light blue and dark blue are plastic. The orange is plastic. The red is a plastic. The only painted parts here are the silver accents, orange accents here on the legs, all these circles that you see. If you come to the back, you have the same silver circles and then these silver accents. And then the orange and silver accents on the planet mode are also painted. And that's basically it. There's a little bit of paint up here. And some of the inner panels do have some paint. But overall, the paint is really highlights and accents. Let's come over to the Haslab Unicron. The head is fully painted, so the horns are painted, the helmet's painted, and the face, which is the same as the O1 Studio Cell, is painted. This chest piece is pretty much 100% painted. So the orange you see is paint, the red you see is paint, the dark blue is paint here, and the silver is paint. Coming to the hip skirts, the silver is painted here, the orange and the light blue, the darker blue is just plastic. Coming down here, you have some paint here on the thighs, you have paint here on the hands, which you also have in O1 Studio Cell. And then this lighter blue is paint, and the silver as well is paint. These pancakes here that make up the planet mode are painted in this orange and the lighter blue. So we do have quite a bit more paint on the Haslab Unicron, so we're going to have paint over the Haslab Unicron. All right, next we're going to talk about the build quality on these two figures. So starting with the Haslab Unicron, I have actually transformed this a couple times, and it really is solid. It doesn't have anything. I was expecting some, kind of cheapness to it because it is a Hasbro product. It is a War for Cybertron, actually, the line. But everything is well built. So all of these little spikes you see here are kind of a softer plastic. So even if you run into them, they don't break. These pieces here also have some flex to them so they don't break. Although it is kibbly here. I'm going to be removing this kibble. But they're kibbly here, so it does kind of look kind of weird. But in terms of the quality, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to break. Same for these wings here. The wings feel solid. They're a bendy plastic, so it's not going to bend or break if you kind of bump into it, which I have done. And the build quality overall, as you transform it, again, even these pancakes here on the side, they do transform nicely and they lock into place and they really become solid in this robot mode. When it comes to O1 Studio Cell, it is also really solid in the robot mode. Where things go wrong is during transformation. So there's a couple issues. Number one, the panels here on the arms, there is a tab that is easily broken. A lot of people have broken it. That's why in most reviews you see, they talk and warn you about those. These little spikes here are also a harder plastic. They didn't use a softer plastic, so you do want to be careful. Same with the horns here. They are a harder plastic and it's thin at the end, so you really got to be careful with those two things. We also have these rings here, and the rings have to come together on planet mode. And because they're a harder plastic and not a softer plastic like the Haslab, they tend to break. We've had a couple of people break these as well. Just because trying to take them apart, they do tab together, and pulling them apart, you're trying to sandwich it together or take it apart, and it does tend to have issues there. So those are all things to watch out for. But because of those issues in terms of transformation, I'm going to give build quality over to Haslab. Shockingly and surprisingly, I think they did a good job on this particular figure. All right, next we'll go over the articulation. And since these figures take up a lot of space in my review area, we're just going to show them one at a time. In order to show articulation, we're going to articulate all the joints here. It's going to be a little tough on the Haslab because it's kind of big and it's actually heavy. But we're going to try to do it on camera, so I'll do my best. And then we'll look at the O1 Studio Cell. So the head is on a rotating swivel, so it goes up to there, down to there. Not really much down, which I wish it actually had a little bit more down. It does rotate around. The mouth can open here and close. There is a little spring-loaded mechanism here where you can put those little tiny minifigures in there and you can eat them. I don't know, it's a little weird gimmick there, but they do have it. You have a rotation with the shoulder on a really, really strong ratchet, so it's pretty tight, but just trust me, it goes all the way around. These wings can ratchet on their own, so you can get them kind of rotated and they click into place in different locations. So if you want to, you can lock them. Now, I'm not sure why you would do that, but you can do that. There's a little bit of movement on this. You can kind of move them, but mostly they're kind of stuck like that. Moving down, you have a rotation here at the bicep. You have a single joint elbow, gets you 90-degree bend at the elbow. You have a rotation at the wrist. The hands are individually articulated on 1, 2, 3 joints. So you can get them curled up. You can really pose it however you like. And then the thumb is on a ball joint, and then a single joint here, and then another joint down here. And that's so you can get it folded up for transformation. But pretty nice hands there. You do have a waist rotation on a ratchet. Really nice tight rotation there. You have hip skirts here and on the sides, and then the same hip skirt on the back, just trust me, it's there. The leg rotates up to there. It goes back basically the same amount, which I'm not going to be able to show you. Out to the side on a very, very strong ratchet, which is blocked by his wing, but there you go. Goes out to there. Rotation at the thigh. Let's get all this fixed up. You do have a essentially 90-degree bend at the knee, but you do have this kibble here that does kind of get in the way just a bit. It doesn't actually cause a hindrance, but it is just kind of tough to deal with. And then moving down to his feet. The feet have the toes that are ratcheted and articulated there. the foot can go in and out on a ratchet, and also can go forward and back on that ratchet. Next, we'll take a look at the articulation on O1 Studio Cell. So the head is on a rotating swivel, so it rotates around and also goes up that much and down that much. The more you pull the neck out, the more movement you get, so that's pretty cool. The mouth does open up and close. You have a rotation at the horns here, and they can go inwards. That's mostly for transformation, but you can use that here in the robot mode. The wings can actually go up and down on this joint here. You can also splay them out if you want to, or have them all the way in, whatever you prefer. And then they go kind of rotate on that joint too. So you can really get a lot of movement and get them in the whatever position you prefer for him. And he can actually take up a little bit more room too if you want him to. You'll have a rotation at the bicep here. Actually, you have a shoulder joint here. It is die cast, so that allows you to get a lot more movement. You can get the arms further away from his body, or you can have it tightened up, or you can have it kind of in the middle, which is what I usually do. Have it just a little bit out. You have a rotation at the bicep on a soft ratchet. You have a double jointed elbow, gets the full bend there. The hand is on a ratchet as well. The fingers are individually articulated, so you get 2 joints on each finger, and then you get the base is a ball joint. Same for the thumb, you have a base ball joint and then 2 pin joints for each finger. Moving down, you have a waist rotation on a ratchet, so that locks in place. You have a hip skirt here and a hip skirt on the side, and the same hip skirt in the back, which I'm not going to be able to show you. And then the leg can go up to there. It can go back the same amount since it's symmetrical. You have a bend here at the mid-thigh. You have a rotation at the mid-thigh. You have a bend out to the side. And this does happen occasionally. These little silver things can fall out, but you can just put it right back. They just fit right back in. It goes out to the side up to there. Showed you the rotation. The knee gets you 90 degrees. Pretty much the full bend there. And then the feet rotate. They go in and out. They go back and forth. They don't go back and forth, but the toes do move up and down, and the heels move up and down. Now, I was really surprised when I got this Haslab Unicron at how much articulation they built into this thing. Now, it's not like a Titan class. They really went all out with this guy, and I was really surprised. But regardless of that, I still think the O1 Studio Cell has just a bit more articulation. It's got the double jointed elbows. It's got a little bit more movement on the knees because it's not hindered by all that extra stuff. The feet are a little bit easier to move. They don't have ratcheted toes, but you can move the toes, and also these individual pieces do move on pins. And then the head itself does look down, which is really important for a Unicron figure to look down because it's going to tower over the other characters. So I'm going to give articulation over to O1 Studio Cell. Next, we'll talk about the transformation and engineering. When it comes to transformation, this is kind of an easy and obvious one. The O1 Studio Cell transformation is really kind of a nightmare. It's hard to hold on to because it doesn't stand on a stand while you transform it. Whereas the Haslab Unicron, you can put it on the stand in planet mode or in bot mode, and it holds it the entire time while you're transforming it. It's also a relatively easy transformation because it's really just a panel former. It's got all the panels here, all the panels here. You do fold up the arms and legs, and that's the same for this guy. But this guy really hides all the panels away. And that's why the transformation is so frustrating on this guy. So I'm going to give transformation over to Haslab. When it comes to engineering, I think the Haslab kind of took the lazy way out and just decided to put everything on the back of the legs and his back. Whereas O1 Studio Cell was able to engineer and hide everything away and really make it a clean bot. So we'll give engineering to O1 Studio. All right, now I'm going to talk about the alt modes on these two. And I put up images there from their transformations. I'm obviously not going to transform both of these here now. And we'll also put the G1 cartoon image there so you can take a look. Now, both of them do a pretty good job at mimicking the G1 planet mode, but the O1 Studio Cell kind of has a very small globe, and it's actually not quite round. And that's because they have a completely symmetrical robot in planet mode, whereas the Haslab takes the basically the panels and puts them around. So it kind of cheats on that because it puts the panels kind of on the back of the robot and you can kind of hide it. So you end up with that nice sphere. So that's one thing. The other thing is the rings. So the rings on the O1 Studio Cell are quite small. And there's not a lot of detail. If you look at the Haslab, you can see there's a lot of detail. Now, neither of them have the lights or anything, but there is quite a bit of detail. The O1 Studio Cell also has a lot of the spikes that are pretty accurate. And then the actual maw with that orange detail, that looks really nice on the Haslab. So I'm going to give Alt Mode over to Haslab. I just think they nailed it. That Platinum Mode looks amazing. All right, the final factor on these two is going to be the cost. And we're going to use retail prices and not the aftermarket. So the O1 Studio Cell retail in China was $300, but US retail was $400. The Haslab Unicron, depending on where you lived and the shipping and the tax in your location, it ranged somewhere between $600 and $700. So we're going to give cost over to O1 Studio Cell, comes in much cheaper. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score there. It is going to be a tie here. And I actually wasn't expecting that. I thought Haslab would actually win on this comparison. Regardless, I am still keeping the Haslab Unicron. But let me talk about why you want to pick one or the other. So I think Bobby Skullfist did talk about this already, so I'm just going to credit him with this. It really depends what your display looks like. What is your intention with the display of Unicron? Are you intending to display him with other figures where you want it to tower over them, you want it to be big, and you don't really care about the cleanliness in terms of the panels and the overall look? Or maybe you don't care about scale and you're just looking for a good looking, clean looking, cartoon accurate Unicron that's going to stand on a shelf, then O1 Studio is going to be one for you. So that's really how you're going to have to decide. For me personally, I want something that's going to be big. I want something that's going to display well with my Masterpiece collection. No, it is not in scale, and actually nothing would ever be in scale. But for me, this fits in better with my collection. So that's really it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.